Broadcasting to you from somewhere deep in the heart of Texas. Once again, it's me, honey. Hello, hello, hello. How you doing? Hello, Rich Magoo. How are you? Good to see you. All right. So today, what I want to talk about is being dazed and confused in the end times. So this is scripturally just fair warning, so everybody knows. Okay. Just waiting on my computer to pull my notes up. Page unresponsive. Will you bring my notes up here? And my computer's been acting up lately. Wait, as soon as they get pulled up, I'll start this. Hmm. Oh, there we go. All right, sorry about that. So there's income confusion in 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 4. Ever since the days of the early church, there have been, false teachings about the coming of the Lord, right? Okay. And there goes my page again. Whenever I do my notes to get a sermon compiled, if I have it on paper, then my writing is in scratch. I can't read my own writing. And then when I do it on the computer, and I try to rely on the computer to do it, I have these kind of issues all the time. It's just so frustrating. Okay, let me go up here to my history and pull my notes up this way because obviously this isn't working. I know my YouTube people, they're used to this. It happens all the time. I can't believe this. I've had these notes pulled up since early this morning when I wrote the sermon, and yeah, and now it's giving me a hard time. I'm not a quitter. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, I just got through doing the whole disty frag and clean up on my computer and everything else, and it's still giving me a hard time. I pray it didn't have a virus or anything. Wow. Okay. I'm still on with YouTube. Okay. Good deal. Bear with me, Roots. I'll be back with you in a minute. Oh, gosh. OG Slim. Okay, here we go. Yay, they pulled up. Okay. It's just going really super slow. And my computer's usually really fast. I don't understand it. Why is it giving me such a hard time on this? When you're not well grounded, you're easily tossed to and fro. That's part of the word I want to speak about today. You know, um, let's just say that the false teachings, about the coming of the Lord, and that there's a few, deceptions out there. Like in AD 135, a man named Montanus, he proclaimed that the New Jerusalem would soon descend from heaven to earth and land in what is now Turkey. And he was wrong, right? And then about 100 years after that, a historian named, I think it was Hippolytus, I might be botching his name, he records that a bishop convinced his followers to sell all their possessions and follow him into the wilderness because the Lord was on his way. And he was wrong, and his followers were left homeless and hungry. And then you skip ahead to the year 999, St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and it was filled with people weeping and trembling, because they were sure that the 1,000-year mark would be, the time. And eventually they went on home to their usual routines. And then during all the Middle Ages, there were many groups who taught end time doctrines, right? And many of them set dates and caused a lot of confusion. And some taught that the Puritans were setting up the New Jerusalem on American soil and would usher in the millennium. And then we have in the 19th century, for example, in America, there was a surge of interest in the second coming. In fact, that's when a farmer named William Miller taught that Christ would secretly snatch away believers before the public coming. And this is now called the rapture. Miller predicted the rapture would occur on March 21st, 1842, and he revised the date to April 3rd, 1843. And over 3,500 followers jammed the Boston Advent Temple. And the next day, he lost some followers. Yes, he did. But he continued to set dates. So, you've heard of some of the groups that grew out of the teachings of the Millerites, the Jehovah's Witness, the Seventh day Adventists, trace their roots back to Miller. And Hal Lindsey, he taught that Christ would come within 40 years of the time Israel became a nation in 1948. Well, the 40 years was up in 1988. And recently, Jack Van Impe, and I loved him before he passed away. He said that he believed Christ would come back between 2008 and 13. And well, that didn't happen. And the Bible's teaching about end times events, it's tricky, in spots. And as a result, some people prefer not to study it at all. They don't see its relevance. But the scriptures are filled with information about the end times. In 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17, it assures us that all scripture is inspired and profitable to bring us to spiritual maturity, right? So, if we don't study end time prophecy, then we can be sure we will have areas of spiritual deficiency. And other believers, they're afraid of prophecy because they've seen people go off the deep end. But the question is this: do people go off the deep end because they study prophecy? Or do people with unhealthy perspectives gravitate towards prophecy because they're looking for something to go off the deep end with? I mean, did prophecy make them weird? Or did they become obsessed with prophecy because they were first weird? And I think the latter. Just saying. Okay. But, end time events, they can be breeding grounds for heresy. And this is something new. This was a problem even in the first century. So the main idea here is when you're not well grounded, you are easily tossed to and fro. So false teaching, unsettles the biblically unlearned, and about the second coming of Jesus, a few, not most, rabbis believed, in two messiahs. How about that? And Christians, they understand one Messiah, two comings, of the one Messiah. And the day of the Lord, here refers to the tribulation, a period of 700 years on earth, culminating with the Battle of Armageddon or Armageddon. And, they had apparently become alarmed through false prophecy. Someone claimed to receive a message from God to this effect, through a bogus report. And someone either claimed that Paul was teaching that the day of the Lord, had come, or that the Antichrist had risen to power. That was just rumor, right? And through a forged letter, someone went through a great effort to compose a letter and sign Paul's name to it. And notice in 3:7 that Paul, he began signing his letters to authenticate them. So, expect to encounter much false teaching, but neither gullible nor naive, So when you're not well-grounded, you're easily tossed to and from. So the way to recognize false teaching is to be fluent with the truth. Okay? So, loyalty to apostolic teaching, now permanently, enshrined in the New Testament, is still the test of truth and the shield against error. So we have rebellion that has to occur first. And the word translated rebellion is made up of two words, meaning to stand away from. Some have taken this as the rapture, but the word itself is not used this way in the Greek. Okay? All right, I'm going to pause a second and check these messages. YouTube, I'm on stereo too, so if you wonder what I'm doing here, this is it. Okay. Oh, I'm awesome, Mama. Thanks for asking. Take your time. Thank you. I was trying to pull her notes. Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so this provides an argument for the agnostic, mid and post-trib, positions. Why did Paul not say we know that the tribulation cannot be happening now because we're still here? You know, and then MacArthur he counters. It's important to see that the Thessalonians fear. It indicates that Paul had taught them that the rapture of the church precedes the final wrath of God, including the tribulation in the day of the Lord. First Thessalonians 5:2-5 and Revelations 3:10. If we had taught them that they were to go through those judgment periods, they would have been rejoicing because being in them meant that the Lord's coming was near. And clearly Paul had taught them that they would be taken up before those times. Thus their confusion, when they felt like they were in it. So whatever the relationship of the rapture or the tribulation begins with a unique rebellion against God. Seems like what's happening right now, big time. But then again, people have probably said that all throughout the centuries. You know what I mean? You know, some teach that the Messiah will not appear until the whole world is either entirely righteous or entirely wicked. I believe it'll be wicked. Now, the Greek word for apostasy, that means falling away or withdraw, and it means the abandonment of the faith. And, church history has seen many apostasies, but this will be a massive, fast religious abandonment of the basic Christian fundamentals. And, we see the man of lawlessness, he has to be revealed too, called the little horn in Daniel 7:8 and also 24, the prince who is to come in Daniel 9:26, and the king who does as he pleases in Daniel 11:36, the foolish, worthless shepherd in Zechariah 11:15-17, the beast in Revelation 11:7, 13:1, and 14:9, and the man of lawlessness and the son of destruction in 2 Thessalonians 2:3. So the lawless one, he's also in 2 Thessalonians 2:8. And the one who's coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, which is 2 Thessalonians 2:9. So the most common term by which we refer to this man is the Antichrist, and that's 1 John 2:18. So according to the Jewish Encyclopedia, even the names of the Antichrist in this passage are of Jewish origin. The lawless one. So it's none other than Belial, who Paul mentions in another place as the opponent of the Messiah. And it's a name interpreted by the rabbis as compounded of without and yoke, so that Belial is the one who will not accept the yoke of the law. And that's Deuteronomy 92. But it's evident that the little apocalypse represents not a Christian, but the Jewish view of the anti-Messiah. And the pseudepigraphic literature period, it's the expectation was prevalent of the appearance of him, one of Satan's lieutenants, if not of Satan himself. And that's his activity, and it was imagined as being almost identical with the expected of the Antichrist in Thessalonians. So I find that kind of interesting. How is he initially revealed? What do we know about it from the book of Daniel, mostly chapter 9? And we learn that he'll probably be Italian or Romanian, or whatever it means to be a descendant of the Roman Empire, okay? So he will lead a united Europe, and he will sign a 7-year peace treaty with Israel, a treaty he will break. Which a lot of people say they think, Obama's going to be the Antichrist, and other people state that they think he comes from Turkey. So, everybody has their own opinions. I'm fluid. I can float around, I'm not going to, stick on one thing in particular because we just never know. But we do know that he's doomed to destruction, right? He exalts himself above God. He invades the Jewish temple and claims to be God, and the temple was destroyed in 70 AD and has to be on Mount Zion in Jerusalem right now. A Muslim shrine inhabits the location. So, it can be rebuilt quickly, however, and plans are in the works, so we have to check that out. And just as the true Messiah claimed to be God, so does the false. So ignorance of the Bible and doctrine is not bliss. So when you're not well grounded, you are easily tossed to and fro. Some believers think that the best strategy is to be passive and ignorant. Then they bemoan that they didn't teach their children properly. That they didn't know the word well enough to keep from getting on a spiritual detour. And that they made foolish decisions because they didn't cultivate biblical wisdom. But we've got to believe that you need to know and start learning. I mean, you've got to stop taking the attitude of the grade school student in English class who asks, what do I need to know this for? We've got to believe that if God put it, in his hand, it's important for us to know it, So, that's just my opinion on that. It probably doesn't mean much, but there you have it. And we have subtle changes that happen, and then we have these huge consequences. Seemingly minor adjustments can, have a far-reaching consequences. This is especially true in the spiritual realm. I mean, think about that. One of the fringe benefits of being, around a teacher, that's English or history, is receiving the occasional jewel of the, you get, essays, and they share this stuff with you. Well, my uncle, he just happened to be a teacher. And I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that I learned just from him speaking, with my parents and stuff. And I don't know, it's pretty genuine that students have bloopers, and they're collected by teachers throughout, the United States, from 8th grade, like to college level. So what I'm trying to say is, here's one. The inhabitants of Egypt were called mummies. They lived in the Sahara Desert and traveled by camelot. The climate of the Sahara is such that the inhabitants have to live elsewhere, so certain areas of the desert are cultivated by irritation. The Egyptians built the pyramids in the shape of a huge triangular cube, and the pyramids are a range of mountains between France and Spain. So that's like, one of the essays that was received. So, the Bible's full of interesting caricatures, right? In the first book of the Bible, Genesis, Adam and Eve were created. Okay, this is another one. In the first book of the Bible, Genesis, Adam and Eve were created from an apple tree. One of their children, Cain, asked, am I my brother's son? And God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac on Mount Montezuma. And Jacob, son of Isaac, stole his brother's birthmark. And Jacob was a patriarch who brought up his sons to be patriarchs, but they didn't take to it. One of Jacob's sons, Joseph, refused to the Israelites. So you see how people can really mess things up. I mean, Pharaoh forces the Hebrew slaves to make bread without straw. These are some of the notes that were written. They're just hilarious. Moses led them to the Red Sea, where they made unleavened bread, which is bread made without any ingredients. Afterwards, Moses went up to Mount Sinai to take the 10 Commandments, and David was a Hebrew king skilled at playing the lyre. He fought with the Philatelists, a race of people who lived in biblical times. Solomon, one of David's sons, had 500 wives and 500 porcupines. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist saying that. That was some of the essays that were written, and I thought they were pretty funny. So, just like I'm saying, the main idea is seemingly minor adjustments, they can have far-reaching consequences. So this is especially true in the spiritual realm. So the first little change is a change of greeting. The way we view life is altered. So, like God's people in the community, there's a unique plan, from God, as evidenced by Paul's greeting. And then Jewish people would greet one another with Shalom Elohim. And then Gentiles with greeting, a word that can also mean rejoicing. But Paul, he changes this and he continues the Jewish Shalom, which means peace, but he alters the Gentile greetings to become grace. So from greetings to grace. So the church is connected to the Jewish heritage of the Old Testament, but includes Gentiles whose behaviors have been altered to conform to godliness. And now, so we exalt God's grace because everything about us every breath we breathe and every blessing we have is by God's grace. So his favorable disposition towards us based upon his own determination is to bless us. So it's only by experiencing God's grace that we have peace with God, and that the same grace provides us with the potential of peace in a daily life, because peace comes from walking closely with God. And we can walk closely with God by grace. So we now view life as a gift of God's grace, and our daily provisions as by God's grace, and our purpose is living to glorify God because of his grace. So I hope that wasn't confusing. So seemingly minor adjustments can have far-reaching consequences, and this is especially true in the spiritual realm, like I was saying. The second subtle change is a change of location. So the church is in the God, the Father, and the Lord Jesus Christ. So implying the Father and Son are on equal footing. In Christ, it refers to our special legal location in heaven. Colossians 3:3. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. And our perspective about ourselves is revolutionized. Before, let's just say this. People's position in heaven is there legally. People have all their ducks in a row. Sorry about this. Sorry about that. Okay. So, like I was saying, Bon. My son came in. So anyway, what I was saying was our position in heaven is there legally. All of our ducks are in a row. But since this is by God's grace, nothing can happen to alter these plans. So we live with one foot in heaven and one foot on earth. So in Christ and in our neighborhood, right? So in Galatians 1:2, we read the churches in Galatia, true, they have churches, they're always multi-campus, one location in heaven with God and one in earth in the world, but not of the world. So we're balanced as like a community or as an individual believer, to the degree, that we cultivate our heavenly relationship to God with practical service here on earth. So there you go. And some people, they tend to say there's subtle change in prayer. And people say church life can be boring. Well, an elderly woman, she walked into a local country church, and the friendly usher greeted her at the door and helped her up the flight of steps. And he asked, where would you like to sit, politely. And basically, here's what she responded. Okay, my computer. She says, the front row, please. She answered, you really don't want to do that, the usher said. The pastor is really boring. Do you happen to know who I am? The lady inquired. No, he said. I'm the pastor's mother. She replied indignantly. Do you know who I am? He asked. No, she said. Good, he answered. Prayer can be boring when we're praying for many people that we don't know. So the task of prayer becomes empowered, by relationship. So when believers care about people, they pray for them. And we should care more about their spiritual progress than their physical health. For it is when we remember people, their faces and names and their needs, that we're promised both to thank God and to pray for them. So I just say that prayer requests are most often linked to the rapid spread of the gospel and the advancement of Christ's kingdom. And believers are encouraged to seek God's wisdom and revelation, perseverance, and power. And petition comes across as a dynamic agent of change and something that seizes the initiative, and it seeks to accomplish a specific good. It goes on the offensive, and it outmaneuvers the forces of evil. Outmaneuvers. I said manure. It outmaneuvers the forces of evil. It doesn't just react to disaster. So, nothing kills prayer meetings like praying for people you don't know about, one ailment after another. And nothing invigorates them like praying for people you know, and elements, yes, but spiritual breakthroughs and victories even more so. So seemingly minor adjustments can have far-reaching consequences, and this is especially true in the spiritual realm, like I was saying. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this because, yeah, I think I got my point across. Hopefully, it wasn't so confusing. Hello, the White Tupac. How you doing over there, brother? Good to see you. Thanks for coming to visit me. Let me check my messages over here on stereo real quick. You guys, hang in there. Yep. Yep. Mhm. Yep. True. Yep. 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 You're right, OG. They want us all in internment camps. Hmm. People's land taxes have been raising up to 50% higher than what they used to be. They're doing this on purpose. Mountain Mama.
Honey, and it's always a pleasure to listen to you speak the word.
Mhm.
You put such intriguing, fun twist to it that it makes you want to learn more. And I love you for that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mountain Mama. You're a blessing. It's a blessing to hear those kind words. It's all Father, It's all for His will. I'm doing well, Tupac. How are you, sweetie? Good to see you. Somebody on YouTube. So good to see you. How did that hernia surgery turn out? Did you heal and everything turned out okay? I kept you in my prayers, brother. Yeah, I really wish YouTube had the same setup like stereo does. There's nothing like stereo, where we can all interact with each other. I love that so much. It makes it so much more personal. Because on YouTube, all we can do is text back and forth. Yeah. Okay. Reach Magoo, thanks for sticking with me. And the White Tupac, I'm going to end my YouTube broadcast now. I'll see you tomorrow, God willing, I'm still around. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Love you. God bless you.